Alright guys, we're going to start this session, and this is our EIU Pride panel, and this is something that I hold near and dear to my heart, and I know I'm just an introductory person, but the reason why I hold it so near and dear to my heart is because a couple years ago when I was in high school, my brother came out of the closet actually, and from where I'm from, Jason is from there as well. It is a very closed-minded, small country town, and nobody is really accepting of other people. And so I know I went through a lot of stuff because I became known as like the faggot sister, and that was really, really hard on just, it's hard on everybody in the family, not just the person that you are bullying. Like people's families become involved, and it is like very, very intense. So I want you guys to like give them your undivided attention and like show them so much respect because they have gone through so much. So I appreciate you guys being here. Yeah.
Well, first I'd like to thank you for sharing your story. That was really great. Like she said, we're EIU Pride. We're Eastern's only recognized GSA. But yeah, so first a couple shameless plugs. We'd like to invite you to come to EIU Pride if you're from around here. Mondays at 8 in this building, 3rd floor, Charleston Mattoon Room. Yeah, Mondays at 8. And we also have an event coming up, the Diva Drag Show, which is a lot of fun. We raise a lot of money for SACUS, so feel free to come out to that. Did I miss anything? No? Okay, so basically how this is going to work is normally when we do Pride panels, we share our coming out story, then take question and answers. But because this is for bullying, we thought we'd share our experiences with LGBT bullying, since those are kind of intertwined with coming out sometimes also. So I guess I'll start. My name is Jason. I'm a mathematics major here. I'm a junior. My experiences with bullying come from living in a small town, and that really affected me coming out because I didn't come out until freshman year of college. Where I'm from, words like fag and that's so gay get thrown around a lot. So growing up, I really associated being gay with the lesser and being a negative thing. And so that kind of caused me to not want to come out until college when I thought it'd be a little bit safer. And even growing up, I remember thinking, I'm gay, but I'm not that type of gay. So I really internalized a lot of homophobia for quite a few years of my life before finally accepting that being gay is okay, and I'm proud of who I am now. And yeah.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. I identify as bisexual, and I'm not confused, I'm just greedy. Throw that out there. The first family member that I came out to was my twin sister, and she and I refer to each other as half of me, other part of me, you know, the things that twins do. And so when I told her, she was like, I knew there was something gay about me, only it wasn't me, it was you. So I was like, yay, twin sister, you're really cute for accepting me like that. The only family member who has an issue with it is my mother. She has made it clear that she thinks that two women together is disgusting, and I wouldn't necessarily say that I was bullied before I came out, but my mom was really like adamant about her views on like women together. She's kind of a contradiction because she accepts gay men, which is kind of like backwards because it's usually the other way around. But you know, I'm working on her. My dad's cool because we check out girls together, so we're good.
My name's Sheldon. I'm a junior here, double major in psychology and sociology. I identify as gay. Alright, so growing up in like junior high school, I was called like faggot and stuff like that. And so, in that aspect, I was bullied, but at the same time, it wasn't like that often, so I didn't think about it as much. But my sophomore year of high school, my mom kind of found out that I was gay, and it was just kind of a very like, turbulent, violent time for us. So in the sense, a lot of my bullying and kind of self-doubt or self-hatred came from my family members not accepting me. And so luckily I had support from like friends and like teachers, but a lot of my doubt about myself and who I wanted to be stemmed from the reaction my family had. So
Hi, my name's Bug, like an insect. I'm a senior here at Eastern and I'm a sociology major. I identify as transgender. Coming out for me was a little bit different than Jason's, but kind of on the same length. I'm also from a rural town in southern Illinois. I'm only about an hour away from Kentucky, if that puts that into perspective for you. When I was in high school, somebody actually started a website about me. It said, so-and-so is a faggot.tumblr.com. And what they did was they recruited some students from my high school and those around who had known about my identity, and they would get on this website and write about me and different ways that I should kill myself or somebody should kill me. Because where I'm from, it's really a sin and very looked down upon. So that's a little bit about that coming out experience for me. So when I came to college, I was like, ta-da, here I am. So it was a really great affirming experience on the other hand, but that's where I come from.
All right, so the way this kind of works is we like to keep it more like a dialogue, so we're open to questions from you guys. We did have a moderator, but plans kind of fell through, so I kind of have a list of questions if there's that awkward silence. But yeah, so if you guys have any questions. Yeah.
So, do you find it easy to like make friends with other people that are like gay as well, or do you find that it's harder because people don't accept it?
Yeah. So I think if I understand the question, yes, it's easier to be like. I have a lot of really gay friends, and it's just because I've been really involved in the community and like I've been actively seeking a lot of gay friends because I never had that growing up. But it's a lot of finding your own community type thing where you actively look for people like you and share similar stories and stuff like that. So I think that's why sometimes it is hard to find people because not everybody's out, not everybody's ready to come out, and you got to let people do that on their own time. But
I think yes, because a lot of times people who are gay tend to click together and then they become each other's support when they can't find it elsewhere. So I think that's one reason why it's easier for us to be friends with each other and find each other. No, because like Jason said, not everybody's out. So yeah.
I agree, and I think because a lot of us have experienced rejection from our families, your friends and the community becomes your family.
Same.
I know that you guys had identified as bisexual and transgender. Do you find bullying within the LGBTQ community because of where you identify with?
Do you want to go first?
I would say yes. Personally, I've never been bullied for where I stand, but some members, even like for such a diverse group, some people are still not as open-minded as they should be. So a lot of people think that some people think that bisexuals are confused and they don't know where they want to be on the spectrum, but that's not the case a lot of times. And then like I feel like the transgendered community doesn't get that much support, or they're not as understood as like other letters in the alphabet do. But
yeah, I agree. I think that the T is sometimes a forgotten letter because a lot of people feel that since it is a gender-based identity that you don't necessarily belong with the LGB, that you should maybe be your own little group, but you can come sometimes, but not all the time. I kind of think of it like Mean Girls, like you can't sit here, kind of like that. But I've had really positive experiences being in the LGBT community and being trans. I have really found a community of trans folk within the community.
I'm a psychotherapist at a very small nursing college, and we are way too late in doing anything regarding diversity. So I'm finally convinced our president just this month we need to have a diversity statement. We had to implement a diversity statement. So I'm wondering if from each of you, if you could tell me some of the things that you would love to see in a diversity statement, and what do you think is one of the, at the very least, what I should do on campus?
I went to this conference recently at this college, and they told us, our diversity statement is longer than our mission statement for the university. And I think that is something that really is a very powerful statement and very encompassing, is that diversity, isn't just gay people. It's not a race thing. It's not just a gender thing. It's an all-encompassing issue. There's all types of intersectionality when it comes to the community, and that we all try to work together for a common goal. So I think that if I were going to draft some diversity statement, I would want to be as inclusive as you can and to cover every boundary, because in general, we like to put things in boxes and label things and say, okay, well, you have a disability and you can stay here, and you identify as this and you can stay here, and this is the color of your skin so you can stay here, when in reality that's not the issue.
I would say that in all situations, language is extremely important there because language has so much power to it. But being careful of like certain word choices, like instead of saying men and women, say people, or like trying to think any other like good examples of that. But trying to stay away from specifics and be as general as possible usually helps to be more inclusive.
I agree. Also, I like rainbows. Like the world tends to think in like terms of black and white, and like what's more diverse than a rainbow. So as far as like the LGBT community, that would help. Just seeing that would like open a lot of doors. Like Jason said, language and vocabulary plays a huge role, and even if you use gender neutral terms, or like you refer to someone as like, as far as parenting, like if someone was from a same-sex household, same-sex couple household, then like saying parents rather than mom and dad is like something that would help a lot too.
Just kind of reiterating everything they've said, I think any kind of diversity statement needs to be encompassing of all types. Because like Bug was saying, it generally when people think of diversity, they think race, sexuality, gender, and class, but it encompasses so much more than that. So just make it so all people feel welcome in that environment.
Going up on that question about a diversity statement, and it's a place of education. How do you all feel? This is sort of related to what you're doing in the diversity statement, but how does bullying or anti-LGBTQ type stuff affect you in terms of education? How does it affect how you're learning? How does it affect the environment?
I think when a student is being bullied at any class level, they're not as willing to participate in class. They're not as willing to get involved in their schools, which kind of puts them at a disadvantage as far as learning other skills other than just kind of mathematics, English, and kind of disenabling, is that the word? Disenabling them to kind of build a social background, a leadership background, and in the end not being as employable if we want to go as far as like the working route and being a citizen of society.
I am a communication studies major, and my minor is arts. And gay people have contributed to history in so many ways that we are not aware of as a society. And I feel like so much of our history is omitted from what we learn in the classroom, and that's oppressive in itself. And I feel like that needs to change in order for us to like achieve like equality. And it pisses me off that I had to wait till I was in college to learn this stuff. And gays have like really contributed in like terms of like literature and art, which is like just two things that I'm really passionate about. So it's just all crazy. It's a mess.
So one of the things that I think race theory definitely like hits on this, but they're called microaggressions. So everyday life, you hear things that just are aggressive towards you on a micro scale, like somebody assuming I'm straight and saying, "Oh, did you check out that girl?" And I'll be like, "Not really," or they say like other things like that. And so these microaggressions can kind of build, and they infuriate you, and you're like, I'm not being taken seriously here. So you think, why am I here? They obviously don't respect my identity here. I don't really want to be here. So that can kind of affect your education. And then just blatant homophobia and stuff like that. I was at a conference recently where a math education professor was talking about microaggressions and counter spaces for the Latin community, and she's told a story about how a predominantly white school, in their honors program, a African American child came and asked and was registered for that class, and they walked into the classroom and somebody asked if they were in the right room. And so things like that where people don't take you seriously. So we probably don't see that as much with the LGBT community, but when people like are blatantly, do you belong here? Like, are you sure you want to be a scientist? Shouldn't you be like over in the arts? Or like, shouldn't you be doing this? Like, it's kind of infuriating. Like, you want to be taken seriously and you want to see your own visibility.
I agree, and I think something else, especially when we're talking about learning in conjunction with bullying, is the emotional aspect and the anxiety that a lot of students face. So let's say I'm going to math class and I have to worry about getting from math class to English class. And what route am I going to take to get from math class to English class that somebody doesn't yell at me, somebody doesn't shove me, I feel safe? And those are things that a lot of us take advantage due to different types of privilege. But those are things that students actively think about. And, even on college campuses, there have been times I know where I have friends who say, no, I never walk that way because there's a guy over there and he always looks at me and it doesn't make me feel safe, So those are things that even on an emotional level that we aren't necessarily aware of because somebody hasn't articulated it. But that doesn't mean it's not going on internally.
I have a question for you, Beth.
Yeah.
You talked about cyberbullying, how the severity that you faced. What support did you receive that helped you? Because obviously you're well-adjusted in the sense. So
Thanks.
What support did you receive from your school district or from teachers or family that helped you get through that situation?
So here's actually the rest of the story, which the first group heard this morning. So this blog is started about me, and my best friend Chris, he goes, you cannot read this blog. Do not read the blog. Please don't read it. So I'm 17. I'm reading it. I'm getting on the internet. This is my life. Internet is my life. I'm getting on there. And I started reading it, and I was like, why did you let me read this? Why did you let me read this? And I thought, I can handle this, right? So I didn't really say anything because, like I said, where I'm from, nobody would have necessarily cared. So then when it got so bad that I actually left the public school system, I had to be homeschooled. My best friend, he printed out this whole, there were, I think, 73 pages of people getting on there and just ripping on it. He gave it to the principal, and so the student who did it didn't have any consequences. They were valedictorian the next year. They went to state in speech. They were the drum major. They were the lead in the musical. Everything that I did, they got to do, and they faced zero consequences. They're actually at U of I now. Nothing happened, and when I left school on November 6th, 2009, my senior year, nobody has ever said anything to me since then. Maybe we should have taken an action. Maybe it wasn't the best thing to do to sweep it under the rug. But the silver lining is this, that because that happened to me, I have become extremely cognizant of cyberbullying, and when kids at the high school in Charleston are struggling, they tend to talk to me, which is really nice because I have that experience that this did happen to me. It was unfortunate at the time, but we've been able to transform things around, and I got involved with the community here, and it's made me a lot more emotionally aware, I think, of a community's needs.
Did you have a question?
So on my campus, I know that I've got a lot more work than just creating a diversity statement. My goal is that everybody feels welcome from the time they walk in the door as a prospective student until the time they graduate. When you came to campus here, what were some of the visual signs that you knew you were in a safe place?
And vice versa.
Rainbows.
Yeah, I remember a lot of pride signs.
I feel like we've kind of had to make this place safer. Like our generation of Pride has definitely done a lot of work, and I'm really proud of the group that we have because we harassed the administration to give us LGBT resource center. Like we've gotten on their case, like we need this, we need this, we need this, but like it really took a lot of pressure from the students and showing them here are the resources that we need. So I guess when I came to Eastern, I did see a faculty member who I was like, oh, I can tell you're gay because I have some form of gaydar. But it was kind of nice to see, okay, there are queer people here that I can talk to about and figure out if this is a safe campus. So I think visibility within the staff to be open in who they are is great for any minority status.
I think when I decided to come to Eastern, one of the first things I looked up on the page was if they had a Pride, just to make sure like I had those resources if need be. But once I got to campus, everyone was very welcoming and very kind and compassionate, and that's what made me stay on campus. And from that, you learn that there are a lot of people here that are open-minded and willing to help you and support you and help other people understand you. So
I agree, and I think because I work in orientation now, I'm like the undergrad who runs our orientation programs, and I can remember when I came through orientation, like seeing people who I knew, and I was like, oh yeah, like it was just really important to have that visibility. And then, you know, we have the little fair that you walk by and get Skittles, and it says like, come to Pride, and you're like, yeah, this is a thing now, like I can do that if I want, and little things like that. But I also think that there is a lot of work to be done on our campus as well. You know, I give tours, and there's this Chick-fil-A thing is very divided, and I'm not going to take a side or not take a side, but it is a reality that people come on campus and I give a tour and they say, you have that here? So there are things that make things good and bad and create certain vibes, and you know, we can choose to deal with them or not, but little things do matter.
But what would you like to see from allies to show support and solidarity?
Outspoken allies.
Yeah. We kind of talked about how Jason brought up during the last panel that you need to kind of, if you're going to be an ally or if you're willing to be an ally, you need to sometimes step out of your comfort zone and speak up for other people, because not everyone has the voice to speak up for themselves. So I think that's the biggest thing with allies is to, if you hear something, don't be afraid to politely confront someone about the language that they're using, or in a situation that you think that other people may feel uncomfortable in. So
I think allies are a really, really big part of the community, because most of the time there are heterosexual allies, and a lot of times allies need to have a backbone, because you could possibly get it just as bad as like any like gay person being bullied. Like for you said you were known as like the faggot sister or something. Yeah, that's a clear example for like how strong you have to be as a person, and not be a passive ally will really help.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree that it's really about being able to step outside your comfort zone and say, hey, don't say that's so gay, because there's so many other words you could use. And I think, because I consider myself an ally to the trans community, so I know that when I'm in a trans space, that it's not my duty to yell about my opinions in the community. It's my duty to listen to their opinions and to support them. And so I think just listening to somebody and supporting them is the biggest thing you can do for them.
I agree, and I shared, like last go around, like Sheldon was saying, a conversation I had with a communications professor, and he and I were talking about how sometimes you get so tired, you know, consistently fighting for yourself, you have to start fighting for other people to get your groove back, and I think that's a lot of why we sometimes all the time need our allies behind us, because we can only yell so much and feel so much before we start to get so drained, and the allies, I really feel, especially in more vulnerable demographics, really help support us and bring us through rough spaces.
Do you have a question? Or,
I mean, I feel it in myself. I'm going to try and strengthen my sister, like, can you explain more what exactly it means?
Sure. So transgender is an identity where essentially your sex and your gender do not match. As we know, they're not the same thing. So for example, I was born biological female, but I identify as male. And hopefully within the next year, I will be transitioning and on testosterone and going through puberty around 2 again. So the transgender community is a very large umbrella of people. Some people choose to get surgery, some people don't. Some people want to take hormones or testosterone, some people don't. But the thing I like to press most about people who identify as transgender or gender in general is never to assume. Because you don't know, like if I go to a restaurant and I'm sitting with somebody who identifies as female and you put down the menus and you say, what can I get for you ladies? Little things like that oftentimes hurt more than you realize. So if you just use, in the classroom as well, boys and girls, friends, everyone, things like that, it really does, it does put people in less of a box than they would like to be put in. So when we talk about transgender, we're just talking about brain and junk.
Other shameless plug for Pride. We also host an event called Molly hosts it. What's it called?
Tea time?
Tea time. Thank you. Tea time, where we take an hour to go down and break down a lot of what it means to be trans. Really good visual aids. It's a really great thing. We'll have advertisements.
Yeah, we travel all around campus and do it. We go to other schools and do it as well. So it's pretty well received little presentation. And like Jason said, we'll go through terminology, the difference between transgender and transsexual and things like that. Anything that you would want to know about the transgender spectrum, we take really seriously, because trans education is like the vice president of Pride and also my best friend, our favorite thing. So
if you want to have that presented at a class, we also do that too, besides panels.
That's a really clever name.
Get it.
Tea time.
So for people who want to make their campus more inclusive, we have a Safe Zone program here. Can you talk about that a little bit?
The Safe Zone training is open to anyone and everyone on campus, students, faculty, employees, whatever. And it's basically just a training session on how to be an ally. It goes through the vocabulary of everything queer, and it gives you examples of how to be an ally and how to fight the stereotypes that are in the LGBT community. And then at the end you get first time you do it, you get a Safe Zone sticker. The second time you get little stars that say phase 1 and phase 2. But yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, is that something
just makes you more aware of climate and how to change campus climate. Like if you are an RA and you are worried about how to confront people if they are being aggressive to an openly gay student, for example, they would teach you the ways to go about things like that. It's very informative and really helpful, and a quick and easy way to brush up on your Shakespeare.
Any other questions?
What advice would you give to teachers to help people in the LGBT community of how to get through school and just be happy in your environment rather than feeling oppressed?
One big thing I would say is to educate yourself about the community, and then be aware of various resources out there.
Go ahead.
I think one of the biggest things for teachers is to just be a support for that student. If you're comfortable with it, talk to the student about what they're going through. Give them advice, give them the resources. There's PFLAG, Parents and Friends. I can't remember the actual definition. Parents and Friends for the LGBT community. There's the Human Rights Campaign. There's Planned Parenthood. There's all these, and you can Google and email LGBT resources, or Google LGBT resources. And it just gives a bunch of information on just kind of how to help them go through that process. And if you're not comfortable with it, still know that you're there for them, and then just send them to someone that can help them more, just so they feel that if they don't have that family support, they have that school support or friend support as well.
I think the biggest gift that you can give anybody in your classroom is visibility. So, like Jasmine was saying, LGBT community has made so many strides in so many fields. So I feel like you can't really say, well, I can't relate this back to the queer community in any sort of way, because we really have like done so much. I think that doing little things too, like putting in a book with LGBT themes in the library, not harassing people when they go to check it out, and just setting up a classroom environment that says I won't tolerate any sort of aggressive behavior like that. But yeah, just being any sort of visibility for any sort of minority status is super important.
And I would say on that same note, holding people accountable. So like in my example with my life, that person wasn't held accountable. And that's kind of this broad scale, but you know, if you're in a classroom and you hear somebody say, stop that, that's gay, say, hey, that's not okay, not in this room, not anywhere. And that really makes a difference for a lot of students who've grown up hearing that in the back of their head. To hear somebody say, no, you're wrong, that's okay, it really does help people in the long run.
And real quick about safe zone training, you can bring safe zone training to anywhere in the nation or internationally. I don't know exactly what company the program is with, but I'm sure you can Google it and just begin a safe zone training at your school or university or corporation that you're with.
Any other questions? Okay, I have a list. Let me pull it up. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Let me see.
I know that you had talked about no accountability in your school, but were there teachers or administrators or counselors or anyone that you felt like you could talk to at your school?
No. I'm from Chicago, like right in the middle of the city, and my high school was predominantly black, and it was not a safe environment at all to be gay, at all. So even the men who were obviously gay, they like identified as heterosexual, and as long as that's what they identified as, they were safe. There was a lot of gang violence in my school. It was crazy. And as far as the gay community, my teachers and administration just pretty much like turned a blind eye to it. Like it just wasn't on their list of like, it just wasn't their priority at the time because they like had to deal with so many other things. So yeah, no.
I was lucky enough in my school to have the support from friends and teachers, because I don't remember if I said, but me and my mom, we weren't talking for like 4 or 5 months. So all the support that I got during that time, my sophomore year, was from teachers and advisors and through our GSA. And I think that's probably the most important thing for schools is like I said before, just have that support, because you don't know what's going on in the children's home lives. So.
My school is kind of like a good old boys football school, which I think some of us can relate to, but it was very gendered. I remember that whenever we had a male counselor who was training, they pretty much said all male students go to the male counselor, all female students go to the female counselors. And I'm like, and at first some people might say, well, that makes sense, but at the same time it's kind of like, maybe I don't feel as comfortable coming out to a guy as I would to a girl. And then you would also talk to the the male principal if the guy counselor wasn't there. There was just a lot of really weird gendering that I felt was really unnecessary. And the teachers didn't really bring up any gay themes, so I never knew who was okay to be gay with and who wasn't. So it was just kind of hard to figure out and navigate. So there might have been a support system, but because they weren't visual, I couldn't find them. Any questions?
Okay, so I know you guys have also said you've seen a lot of changes, but what changes would you like to see around campus that haven't happened
I would like to have gender-neutral bathrooms in our academic buildings as well as the other places that are not residence halls. Right now, we have gender-neutral bathrooms located in the basements of our residence halls, which is a great first step, so I definitely want to acknowledge that. However, on the flip side, I want to throw out that it's kind of a little bit of a dehumanizing experience when you have to use the restroom, but you have to walk like down 5 or 6 stairs to get down there. It's kind of embarrassing sometimes, but it's great that we have it. So if I'm in the union and I need to use the restroom, I have to kind of do a little toss-up. You know, do I go into the men's room and get weird looks, or do I go into the ladies' room and get weird looks, or do I just decide not to and just hold it? Which is a reality for a lot of transgender students on college campuses. There are people who will literally hold their bladder for 7 to 8 hours. And it's crazy to think about, but when you are faced with get yelled at or get beat up, it seems a little bit easier to you to wait. So I would really like to have the opportunity to use the bathroom safely in all the places that I trek through to learn. And I know that a lot of the students feel the same way. So for me, that would be a great first step. For me and my little trans base would be to get those bathrooms.
I think a cool step would be have queer studies, like anything related to queer. I think right now we only have one class that looks at queer theory, but I mean, I think the women's studies program has been pretty good about being inclusive of gender as a spectrum.
In sociology.
Mm-hmm. So we have quite a bit of support on campus, but the other thing that I would like to see change is just kind of the climate, but that's really not something we can change in one night type thing. Like we can't just put up a resource center and we have a resource center. It's more like we have to go out, educate, and just wait for the culture to change and fight it.
When you all started as students at EIU, did you go through any kind of you're a new student training on bullying or cyberbullying? Was there any kind of like, this is not accepted at this institution? Do you recall anything like that at all?
I think the biggest training is from the RAs, because during those first floor meetings for the RAs, we kind of discuss being inclusive, but that's a real informal, quick little spiel that doesn't do a whole lot. I know being in RA for 2 years now, there are a lot of RAs that will hold their residents accountable for the language that they use, but there's not really anything that really trains students on bullying, anything like that. So I guess that would be one of the things that I would like to see change, is require students, faculty, advisors, all that, to do some kind of diversity training.
We do that sexual assault awareness type thing at the very beginning, which is very misogynistic, first of all, because it tells women not to don't set your drink down anywhere, don't go outside at a certain time, when really it should be focused on saying, hey guys, don't sexually assault anybody. But that's my own personal soapbox. But
no, you're right.
Also include men in that.
yeah, right. Like it's very, very gendered, first of all, very misogynistic. So that whole thing needs to be cleaned up, personally. Opinion. Sorry, rant. But I think, but they could also make it inclusive, like, hey, also don't harass anybody, don't be a jerk, or we'll kick you out of here, type thing. But yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and I think that, you know, an interesting thing to think about is that we're all in this different space together and we're having this conversation, and when people come to college, sometimes we think bullying's not going to be an issue anymore, you know. People don't harass each other in college. Everybody's cool. We're cool. Because we're older and we assume that we know better. And sometimes that's not the case. And it's hard to acknowledge that, you know, we're 18 to 25-year-olds and sometimes we don't treat each other very well. And so I do think it would be influential to have that ground rule of we don't do that here. That's not what we're about as a campus, and that's not who we want to be about.
Just a story kind of hit me all of a sudden. Have you all heard of the EIU Secret Admirers page? I'm sure we've all heard of it, yeah. There's been some cyberbullying on that site towards the LGBT community. We have screen capped it for our group, people saying like, oh, that's a girl, or no, that's a guy, or whatever the hell it is. Like, using the word it to describe a person is very dehumanizing. And so it's kind of like saying, hey guys, let's not use that type of language online for everyone to see. Like, especially even offline, you shouldn't use it. But it was very rough for that person who was getting made fun of online on this big site that everyone in the whole school saw, to face everybody day to day. Like, it still happens in college campuses.
We actually kind of made it our little project to start like screen capping all of the really homophobic or misogynistic or racist comments that go on there, because we can acknowledge it's a fun little idea. Truly, it is. Well, we're not going to rain all over that parade. Because who doesn't like to be admired? We do. Right. But even standing up for people in those different arenas is important, because when your name is put out on there, so Bug looks like this, blah, 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 and everybody's like, yeah, I agree, like. Standing up for that person, and that really does make a difference. A person's a person no matter how small.
Whenever you come out, you kind of get bitter about people that are religious things that you, and that makes you question like your religion and things. So like, how do you guys deal with this?
Can I go first?
Yeah.
It's my favorite thing. So I'm actually applying to be a pastor right now. So that's like where I'm heading. And one of the big things that I struggled with when I came out first round was that everybody thought I was going to burn in the fiery pits of damnation. So a way to safely look for a religious community is kind of hard. So there's a really great place on campus called the Wesley Foundation, personal plug, that is really affirming. And campus minister is on the LGBTQA advisory committee, and she's really wonderful and great. But something that a lot of us still struggle with in the community is that you can't be both. Because even inside of the LGBT community, those of us who identify in the Christian faith face a little bit of animosity. How dare you go with these people who have hurt us for so many years, who continue to hurt us and kick us out of their churches and tell us that we're not worthy and things like that. How dare you go with them? But at the same time, we try to flip it around and say, there are some really crazy people. Can we talk about the Westboro Baptist Church? Do I need to say anything more? Probably not. But there are also people who are like the Wesley Foundation, who are kind and good and think that everybody deserves the love from whatever God that you believe in or don't believe in, that we have that freedom. And I think that that's what's really been important for me when it comes to keeping it separate. Is that I realize I can be both, and that it's okay. And side note, fun fact, the transgender community is much more accepted in religious institutions versus the LGB community. Right now I'm trying to get ordained, and I'm working through this process of ordination, and they let me put whatever name on it I wanted without question. However, in the Methodist Church, if you are openly gay, you cannot be ordained. So there's this kind of weird dichotomy that goes on. But if you are a religious person who is open and affirming, it is important to let people know that, because there are people who struggle, who feel unworthy and unloved, who would like to be loved and affirmed in some welcoming place.
The way I think of religion is that each and every person has their own relationship with whatever God they may believe in, and one can't judge that relationship. So for me personally, when everything happened my sophomore year, my mom went to my pastor. Side note, I've gone to church all my life. My mom went to my pastor, and my pastor was like, well, let's start meeting and talking so we can fix you. And at that point I was like, my belief in the Bible is that God loves each and every one of us, no matter what our sins are, if we consider this a sin. But we're not gonna get into that. And so my belief is that I have this relationship with God that I'm committed to, and we will do our thing together. And it shouldn't be based upon what other people think of my relationship with God. So that's how I separate religion and myself.
I consider myself more spiritual rather than religious. I feel like there's a lot of rules that comes with religion that, like, honestly, who can possibly live up to each and every last one of them? I feel like Sheldon, I feel like your connection with God is something that's personal, and I feel like as long as you're a genuine person and you're not wronging anyone and you're a good person, then God is more concerned with your soul rather than your lifestyle. So.
I was raised Catholic, like half the population of Effingham was. So, growing up, in my church, they never really talked much about homosexuality, just because I think everyone knew it was like a hot button issue, like, let's not drive everybody away, like, or whatever. So I never really had that, like, beating down on me, like, I need to hide this. But I do remember being young and thinking, like, I like pray hard enough, it'll go away or something like that. But growing up, though, I think my religious views have changed because I've gone to college and I've done so many other things in my life that make me kind of stray away from how I was raised. So I think there's other factors too that go into it, but maybe being gay was a big factor, but I think it's just growing up. Your religion changes constantly. Any other questions? Bust out the ones I made. Okay. Okay, so after experiencing bullying, what type of support network was available to you, if any, such as family, friends, teachers, etc.? And then what would you have liked to have been available?
Yeah, we should touch on this before we depart. What would we have liked to have been available to us is kind of what we're tossing out. So show of hands, is anybody else going to be a teacher? Like, is this teacher fun? I think, we've kind of covered this broad band of accountability, of visibility, of correcting language and things like that. Sometimes tackling an issue like this seems like a much bigger task than it actually is. And so that's what I want to say about this topic is that, it's as simple as saying, don't say that. It's as simple as saying, you shouldn't have started that blog about somebody and now we're going to give you detention for a year. Might have been better than just ignoring the whole issue. It's little things like not saying boys and girls. It's things when students say to you, I'm struggling with how I'm feeling, can I talk to you? And you say, yes, you can be safe with me. And things like that, because sometimes we live in a world that encourages us to harden our hearts and to be more cold than we are naturally made to be. And being warm and open and loving towards everyone is much better than being a no one.
I think what I would have liked to have had was a nice visibility of support network, if there was one. There's like this joke of put a rainbow on it, where it's like if you put a rainbow on something, it's automatically gay. But at the same time, it's a nice visual to say, like, just putting a tiny little sticker outside your classroom or like near your name plaque, and it just says, okay, if I need to talk to somebody, I can talk to them. Even if I don't need to talk to them, they're there, and I know that they're going to be a safe place for me to talk if I need to.
I think it could also be as simple as just like being willing to talk about gay issues like Stonewall in a history class, or gay writers or poets or anything like that. Just bring it up in class so people are aware that there is this community and they've given to our history and our culture. I would have liked that a lot in high school.
In my high school, what I would have liked to see was people not treating as if it didn't exist, because that's exactly what it was. Like, it just did not exist in our little bubble. And like me personally, I was like fine. I was never like subject to any form of bullying as far as sexuality, because I'm kind of like the stereotypical like image of a heterosexual like female. So like nobody will ever like tell that I'm bisexual, but like, yeah, I like girls. So, but even for like the guys, I had really close male friends who were gay, and they only came out to like me and another person, and they faced a lot of like a lot of bullying from their other male and sometimes female peers, and things like that are just not okay. So like if the administration, like, you know, in Bug's school was like more like accepting and open, like to talk to like other people, then like it'll help and it'll go a long way, but didn't have it.
Okay, so I think we're out of time, but if you'd like to talk to us one-on-one, feel free, and thanks for having us.